Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are at pedalshift.net/118. You can email the show pedalshift@pedalshift.net, or you can call the voicemail hotline 202-930-1109 and check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Greetings from train number 30, the Amtrak Capital Limited, not far from the C&O, which I understand right now is washed out in a few places. It's been a crazy bunch of weather here in the United States for the last few weeks, and I can speak to that firsthand, but I don't want to spoil anything. Welcome to Pedalshift Tour Journals Volume 10, Part 1. Spoiler alert, I did my ride and I made it. I have so much to say about this ride. It was fun. It was exciting. It was challenging. It had downs and it had ups. And I'm telling you right now, it even had a tiny dose of drama to it. It was great. It is going to be also the fodder for basically the next month of the pod. So Pedalshift Tour Journals Volume 10 is going to be a little bit different this time. I'm going to serialize it rather than sort of just barf it all out in a couple of parts like I've done before. And we're looking at least 6 chapters throughout May and well into June, taking you along for a ride across the state of Missouri. I say at least 6 chapters because it's entirely possible that I may do one a day for each day of riding and then do a 7th that's sort of a wrap up. But that's to be determined at this point. We'll figure that all out depending on how all the audio shakes out. I know I have day 1 because you're listening to it right now. I don't want to stretch things out too much though, because my intention is not to basically make this go all summer long, which could be a little bit too much if we were weekly. So for the run of Tour Journals Volume 10, we're going to go to 2 shows a week. And you're like, Tim, you just went to monthly. And I'm like, I know, but I think that this is probably the better way to do it. So 2 shows per week for the run of the journal. Also, I've got a couple of other interviews that are in the pipeline that I'm potentially, hopefully going to be mixing in here as well, which is why I really want to make sure that I do justice to all those things, because there's some folks who have got some things that are a little bit time sensitive. So that's sort of my hope, is to get this all together for you so that you've got tons of fun bike touring content for the next month or so. So, that is the schedule for a while. We'll go back to weekly later on in the summer. And then if I have another big tour journal that wants to get released like this, then we may go back to bi-weekly again. Oh, wait. See, there I am again. Bi-weekly, semi-weekly. I can't even remember. 2 shows a week for the near future. That's what we're going to do. Also, there's video. I shot a metric crap ton of video because I could. That is going to be released in some way, shape, or form. I'm less certain how that's going to get released. My intention is to do some kind of doc style showing of what this ride was like. I just don't know how much extra I need to throw into it. I also don't know if I'm going to do it as one long piece or in multiple serialized pieces of kind of vlog style. I had talked about doing it that way. I need to look and see what I've got. More to come on that. Most of the tour journal speaks for itself, but from time to time, I'm going to be jumping in to give some additional context, either on top of or around the stuff that I record in the field. And for this episode, I think just kind of giving some context ahead of all of that stuff is probably the best way to go. So here we go. Katy Trail. It's a converted rail trail that stretches from exurban Kansas City to suburban St. Louis in the state of Missouri. So if you're not familiar with the United States, it's sort of right in the middle, the central southern part of the United States. On this edition of the Tour Journal, we follow along on day 1 of the adventure as I ride from my Airbnb, which, by the way, link in the show notes, to that Airbnb. It was really great, and I had a great experience on both ends of it. So link in the show notes to check out that Airbnb. That was in Kansas City. And so it starts as I ride from that Airbnb to the train station. and a snippet of a riding on the Rock Island spur of the Katy Trail, which is the one that is sort of the newest section and it extends the furthest to the west of the entire Katy Trail. Plus, on top of that, we have the end of the day thoughts from my camp from day one in Windsor, Missouri. Day ones can be a mixed bag, and this one was no different. I hope you enjoy. Good morning from Kansas City, Missouri. It's been a day. More specifically, it's been about a day and a half. I am currently riding from my Airbnb accommodations, which were very sweet. I rarely do a shared room within someone's place, but this one was unique. It was a loft above a yoga studio, and I have great affinity for yoga studios, having worked in one for a while. I didn't get a chance to meet her, unfortunately, because I got in at 10 and I'm leaving before 7 o'clock. So there's that. But the location is so great. Boy, Kansas City is really quite nice. I'm very impressed with how quick and easy it was to get from a really sweet little neighborhood here to the train station in, 15 minutes less. It's closer than my home to Union Station, DC. Speaking of, lots of Union Stations. I think every train station I stopped at in the last day and a half has been called Union Station, which I suppose would be confusing if you did a lot and had to refer to them a lot. But since it's in each city, I suppose you're not going to say just Union Station generally. The ride is very simple. It is on a bike route, no real infrastructure, which it doesn't bother me. I think it's the type of infrastructure where it's more lightly regarded traffic roads, which is great. But it is well signed, and I keep passing by places for coffee like a fool, I think. This looks like to be an area called Union Hill, which is nice because last night it was Union Hill going up, now it's Union Hill going down, which is kind of nice. But yeah, Kansas City, I do wish I could have spent more time here. I really have enjoyed being here before. I taught here once, I feel like, and I think I went through here on another occasion with the dearly departed and awesome Louie the Pug. Train ride yesterday was really quite fun, but I have to say, I didn't spend enough time moving, which is sort of the whole point of being in a train. You can get up, you can move, you can stretch your legs, and I found myself really fatigued by the end, which was kind of unfortunate. But that was my fault, not theirs. The fun part, of course, was the dining car. Ended up having dinner with some really interesting Brits, pensioners, I guess they would call them, retired in our parlance. It was kind of interesting, seeing America through their eyes, and they were kind of fun. A lot of construction in this area. New builds, it looks like, as I make my left here. The part that I'm about to get to is the only part that I would say I was a little nervous about looking on Google Street Maps. It feels more, not like a highway, but like a super busy 4-lane road. And I was surprised Google Maps sent me on it until I discovered there was a very easy-to-use sidewalk, which I used even last night when it was zero traffic. This morning, as we're entering what I would suspect would be the early part of rush hour, I think I'm going to also take the sidewalk. Just because. All right. I now see Union Station. It's right in front of me. That was really easy. That was painfully easy. Yay for finding that Airbnb. I had mentioned I've never done warm showers before on a recent pod, and other pods, of course, before then, but that's going to change because I'm realizing how important it is with so many people touring, so I thought I would do it just to experience it so I could speak a little more, I don't want to say authoritatively, but at least speak to my experience. Because when I got the question from James on the beginner series, I realized people have questions about it, and it would be important to be able to answer them. So that'll happen at some point. Union Station, Kansas City. I'm going to be taking a train out to the burbs in a little bit and starting my ride in earnest. All right, more later. The Rock Island Trail. Nicely surfaced once you get on it. The map that I had was a little out of date. Hopefully my ride with GPS will take and show you the detour. And it is a road detour, but it's very short. It is more mileage. But because I was so positive my map was correct, I went back and forth a few times before I realized, no, in fact, the direct route to the Rock Island was, for whatever reason, cut off. It looks like it cuts through some farmland, so I wonder if it has the owner of the land has given a different right-of-way. But in any event, I've only seen a few people so far. I said hello to another person on a bike, and there's a few people coming up. It doesn't surprise me too much. It is early in the week. It's a Tuesday. Wednesday. Lose track of the days when you're on a train. And it's dry. It's very warm, but it's going to get warmer. So if I don't like the heat today, I'm not going to like it for the next several days. Interesting. I'll describe these bikers in a moment. Look. Hi there. Interesting. Kitted up, but on like hybrid-y, mountain bikey kind of things. Interesting. One was a local barbecue joint on their kit. Oh, I should mention I'm wearing my hot weather gear, my synthetic breathy top, and of course sunshades, all white. I am wearing pants, but I'm thinking of going to the shorts in a bit. Some more folks walking here. Hello. How are you? Good, thanks. Yeah, I expect that things are going to thin out very soon. This trail goes through a pretty rural part of the state. Not that the Katy isn't going through other rural parts, but this in particular, there are few, if any, services on this route, which is why I decided to bring some water with me beyond my normal extra bottle. In fact, I think I mentioned this. I have a new water bladder, as it were, but it's not traditional with the bite spout and all that. It's meant to essentially carry extra water for you, and it carries 4 full liters, which, if I'm not mistaken, is close to a gallon, or is that half a gallon? It's quite a bit of water, and I've got it on the rear rack right now in addition to my 3 bottles, but I've been going through water at a pretty good clip, and I had a Gatorade-like substance as well. It's the first real hot ride for me of the season. I am taking my electrolytes because I find that things go much better when I take those electrolyte pills. You know, there's nothing fancy. They're calcium, magnesium. Do they have phosphorus? I can't remember, but it's... Oh, sodium, of course. The best part about them is that they're easy to take, and you could take them, obviously, with plain water. So I tend to drink mostly plain water on a hot ride now. I found, to my chagrin, that drinking even the non-technically sugared with artificial sweetener sports drinks, man, there's a certain point where they just upset my system, and I don't really care for how I feel on them. So sometimes I'll have one, if only to have the spare bottle, but then I'll just rock plain water the rest of the day. That works out better for me. I'll probably throw down a caffeine pill in a little bit, probably at my next water stop. I haven't had any caffeine since the morning. It's another thing that I do myself, and I don't know if I would recommend it. I just know that caffeine is a good performance booster, feel like I repeat myself quite a bit on these, but just sort of going over some of the basics of what I do in the middle of a ride, and also what I'm thinking about as I ride. You can probably tell I'm riding right now. Surface, I think I started talking about the surface here. It's excellent. You can tell it rained maybe a few days ago, or this drains really well, one of the two. It's got some moisture content in it, but it's really, it's behaving quite dry, very flat, very nice. If this is the type of surface that I can expect across the state, it'll be fast. As I mentioned, I was using Ride with GPS, and I usually don't, but because I'm unfamiliar with the route, I thought it would be good to have it on. Crossing a road here that based on the dust in the air, I just had a vehicle go by. Ooh, it's dusty. Looks like a fog right now, except it gets in your eyes and it sucks. Okay, there we go. Extremely localized jetty fog. Surface, as I mentioned, very good. I like it. I'm hoping it stays this way. I think as I recorded earlier, whether that makes a cut or not, I'm lucky enough to have some good weather. It's going to be well into the 80s and usually into the 90s as highs for all of these days. So I suspect I'm going to be an early riser. If this morning is any indicator, in these parts, this time of year, sun's up in the 5 o'clock hour. So that'll probably have me get up earlier. And just cycling in the cooler weather is always for the best. Downside, of course, is services at that hour are minimal at best in a lot of these towns. I was just in Pleasant Hill to start, and it did have kind of your fast foods and your not general store. Well, it's called Casey's General Store. It's sort of their 7-Eleven in the region, but I'm sure they would say it's better. And a dollar store. So it's all there. This, of course, was at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, so there was no worries having access to it. But luckily, the trail towns are relatively plentiful. I'll just have to keep an eye on the maps and whatnot and know what's ahead, just so that I have a little bit of knowledge going into it. As I mentioned, knowing that this trail has few, if any, services and no rail access to water, well, that had me doing something I don't usually do, which is carry maximum amount of water. Better safe than sorry, especially since, as I mentioned, I'm not used to riding in the hot, so my body is probably going to be going through a lot more water. All right, that's it for the early part of the Rock Island Trail. I strongly prefer not riding in the heat. It's well established. I think I have to get used to it as well. It was really interesting because I felt like going into it that my body was a little more tuned to warmer weather. I don't know why I felt that way. I just thought I was. And as it turns out, man, I had some interesting struggles today. Part of it was the heat. And drank a ton of water. It wasn't a hydration issue. Dumped water on my head frequently, tried to cool down. But there were a few times when I literally laid down on the trail. It was interesting to see and feel the difference between letting my body cool down for even just 10 minutes. Because I usually didn't do much more than 10 minutes. But then it would be a lot better for a little while. But I did feel like I was redlining a lot today. So that would be the only real complaint. I just didn't feel very good for large portions of the ride. It was a little more of a slog than I thought it would be, which is just really interesting because I compare the conditions to the Washington ride where the conditions were really miserable, and I would say I felt better for that ride for most of it. And of course it's heat and tuning of your body. Taking the electrolyte pills was really good. I think the water that I filled up on, and I drank a lot of it, it didn't agree with me. I got it from a sink at the Subway in, where was that? Whatever town it was. And, it didn't taste quite right. And I think it didn't agree with my system. I got water here, And it's much better, and my body is agreeing with it more. Now, it might be because I've been off the bike and I'm not, kind of jamming down a trail in low 80-degree temperatures, but yeah, it was kind of fascinating. It's fascinating to see the differences, different conditions, and later in the summer, this would be a cool day for me, and I would jam out on it. So just really interesting to see. Conditions of the trail were really good. It's very hard packed. Surface is largely good, with a few exceptions. It's interesting when they decide to do some repairs on the trail, they throw out like large gravel, like how big would I would call it? Larger than I would expect on a trail used for bicycling. Larger than driveway gravel. You can hear some of the folks here at the park behind me here. So that was kind of interesting to see how they chose to do that repair. That was harder to ride through. I'm on, 38 millimeter wide tires, which is a lot narrower than what I've been riding for a very long time, but I switched over to the Schwalbe Marathon Pluses just because I just wasn't liking how the Marathon Supremes were behaving. I was getting too many flats and too many issues with them and too many unexplained issues. So back to the good old Pluses, and of course everything is perfect. No flats, no mechanicals, no nothing. The bike did great today. It was just amazing. On the road section, it just did so well. South of Lee Summit, that's where I got my sandwich. That was about 15 miles or so to the town where the Rock Island Trail started. And then other than the heat and just how just the general feeling I had for a good chunk of the day, probably the latter 2/3 of the Rock Island section, which was about 45 miles, just didn't feel good. Didn't feel good the whole way. But thankfully, Chilliwack had that little stand, and I was able to get a chocolate milk, and that made me feel a little bit better, which leads me also to the other issue, which is I think that trying to eschew sugars and simple carbs is just not going to work for me on this trip. I don't know if it's because I've been not as good keeping off of them generally at home or what, but I was in what felt like a full stage of bonk for a good chunk of the day. And, I had peanuts and they just nothing agreed. I was in that state where I didn't want to eat, and I knew that wasn't good for me. And so we'll see how all of this goes. I think when I stopped for dinner, I got a sugary beverage at the Sonic. And of course, everything felt better after that. So I think that my liver needed some glycogen and my system needed to be reset a little bit. So I think I'm going to relax for the remainder of this ride. I'm not going to go hog wild. I'm not going to eat bags of Snickers bars or anything like that. But I do think that I need to feed my body some simple carbs, and probably sugar is a piece of that, the longer days in particular. Overall, it was a good ride. It was a good day. It's just always interesting to see how the body reacts to different conditions, and today was a rougher ride. Normally I can bang out 60 miles, especially when 15 of them is on pavement. Man, I can bang that out, no problem. I was doing good speed, everything, but that last 2/3 was a little rough. Sun exposure is another piece to that too. I got a lot of sun, too much sun, and I need to figure out a way to kind of not have that be the case. I was wearing my hat the whole time, but I was really overheating, so maybe more breaks. Tomorrow, I go through the town of Sedalia, about 20 miles in. I think I'll take an extended break there, get something cold in me, just simple techniques to make things a little bit better. But so far, I'd say Katy Trail is as advertised. Really nice surface, really cool. I'm here in camp. I'm at Farrington Park in Windsor, Missouri. Wonderful setup for $10. There's a shower house, there is a bathroom, there's water, there's electricity, a lot of great amenities here, and certainly great for $10. A bunch of people in camp, including a couple guys from Michigan who are also going to be going to Pilot Grove tomorrow, which is my intended destination. Shorter day, 45 miles. cooler now. The sun is kind of sunk below the tree line a little bit, and I don't think I'll need my fan tonight, which is good, and I think I'll have a really good night's sleep. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I'm looking forward to getting a second day under my belt. I think my body is going to react a little bit better, and I think with a little earlier start, it'll be good. Train dropped me off in the 9 o'clock-ish time frame. Normally I'd like to be rolling a couple hours before that, especially in conditions like this. So we'll see how it goes. More to come. Coming up on the next edition of Pedalshift Tour Journals Volume 10, Katy Trail.
Sedalia, Missouri has been a godsend and a curse to me. Looking forward to seeing the videos of frustrated Timmy trying to figure out things.
These aren't the droids you're looking for. And we like to end off the show, as always, with a big thank you to the supporters of the show who are members of the Pedalshift Society. If you like what you hear, you can help maintain Pedalshift as an independent, listener-supported voice while expanding the offerings. We're talking $1, $2, $5 a month. Helps with the cost of hosting the podcast and the website. You can do it for a bit and cancel anytime. One-shot support is welcome as well. If you're not into the small monthly thing, check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Ethan Georgie, Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lane, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Josiah Matthews, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittus, Thomas Skadow, Seth Krieger, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Noah Schroer, Harry Telgadas, John Sikorsky, Richard Killian, Chris Barron, Brian Wren, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Paul Mulvey, Stuart Buchan, Todd Stutz, Mr. T, Roxy Arning, Nathan Poulton, Harry Hugel, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Ruth Divorcey, Michelle Miller, Matthew Lewis, Michael Baker, Billy Crafton, Paul Culbertson, Scott Culbertson, Matt Perry, Danielle Jepson, Cody Flortinger, Tom Beninati, Bobby Ruppel, Roy Everett, Greg Braithwaite, John Mayer, William Cairns, Sandy Pizzio, Derek Wagner, Richard Patch, Mark Messer, and thanks also to all anonymous and past contributors for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.